constituents, and you have a responsibility to represent them.
Actually, I was just going to say, this speaks to the point here, to see at the bottom of that one, it says, directional representation given by individual councillors have no effect. Maybe that's why.
Well, you know, this is but it's a very important point. You know, you are, as a councillor, you are one of 9 members of council. All authority is derived through the council, not through you as an individual. You have no independent authority as an individual. You only derive authority through your contribution to the council decisions. So thus all decisions of council are made by council as a whole, not by individual councillors in direction, or representations given by individual councillors have no effect. So if you go and talk to a business person or a developer and say something to them about an item that's before you, it has absolutely no meaning. It has no authority. I mean, they can hear it at their peril, right? Really, the only thing that you can represent is a decision of council. So, you know, last night's council meeting, council approved your zoning bylaw. You know, it has authority then. But if you say, oh, I can get this through, it means nothing, right?
In fact, they can only potentially have liability associated with it
Yeah.
if they want to use it in a way that is not the way council intended it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because, you know, the public doesn't necessarily understand this. Private sector doesn't necessarily understand this, that you don't have any individual authority. They might actually think you do. Bad plan to try to represent something other than a decision of council as a whole. And then, as you can see down below here, I have laid out these performance expectations. And the headings here really address the recommendations of the Watson report. So there are some general governance performance expectations, and then guidance around meeting preparation, guidance around conduct of meetings, relations with the mayor, relationships with other councillors, and relationships with the staff, conflicts of interest, and confidentiality. So let's just deal with that. Is there anything in these, under this heading of councillor performance expectations, anything that causes you some discomfort? Anything that you think you wouldn't be prepared to put your name to, your signature to? I mean, in my view, this is only my view, but in my view, this is what I call good business-like behavior. And in my view, there isn't anything extreme or unusual here. There are references specifically to some of your own bylaws. So here, council act in compliance with the City of Nanaimo procedure bylaws. So you've already, or you're in the process of making decisions about that, but you have one now. It is assumed, and in fact the law, that you must behave in compliance with that procedure bylaw. And same within the conduct of meetings. And then there is, under the conflict of interest heading here, it says councilors behave consistent with the City of Nanaimo Council policies, conflict of interest guidelines, and legal advice of council. So those are 2 policy documents that you have. So rather than repeating them, I'll just make reference to them. So yes. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
1, 2, 3, 4 bullet down governance.
Yeah.
And the last sentence says councillors do not involve themselves or interfere with the administrative management or operational functions of the city. So, can you explain how that kind of differs from contacting the administration or management and asking some questions and saying,
yeah, so the difference in my mind when I say interfere with the management and the city manager's duty to oversee the administration and management of the organization. You, council as a whole, give him direction and he's going to carry it, right? So if one of you go public works yard and say, I don't like how you're digging that ditch and I want it to be different, that's interference, right? But in terms of getting information from the staff, I think here at the bottom under relations with staff, it says request for information from staff shall be directed to the city manager, director, or department head. Staff will provide all substantive responses to inquiries to all members of council. Where a request for information from a councillor requires staff taking a significant amount of time, and I have just chosen 30 minutes here, we can set that at whatever you are most comfortable with. Where it requires a significant amount of time to respond, the city manager will be asked to approve the work or to direct the request to council for consideration. So, you know, if someone, for example, one of you wanted an analysis of tax rates in Nanaimo compared to tax rates in Zimbabwe or something like that, that would take a significant chunk of staff time. And really, all of you should have a part in making the decision about whether or not staff are going to devote that kind of time. So say it would take 8 hours to do that, a day of their work. So really, a request like that should go to the city manager, and the city manager will decide. And if the individual councillor doesn't like the response, then he can ask to have the item put on the agenda for consideration of all of you. And this is sort of back to your point, Mr. Mayor, earlier. This is when council can take control of this and say, you know, no way. This is not a good use of the corporation's time and resources. We're not going to devote that. Good on you that you're interested in the tax rates in Zimbabwe, but you're going to have to go and find another way to do that. Right?
Talk a little bit about the tricky area of the union presidents. We have two of them. Because they're politicians, and what would you recommend, or what would you talk about in terms of council's interaction with them?
So the union presidents are staff members of the city of Nanaimo, or are they union staff members? So they're shop stewards, or are they?
No, the union presidents one's a firefighter, of course, and one is a staff member for the city, but goes on leave when they're voted as the president.
Oh, I see. Okay, so they're kind of both, right?
And very tied into the operations, of course, because that's they're representing the people.
And because, of course, they would bring forward all the grievances and stuff like that, right? Well, you know, that's a hard question for me to answer just off the top of my head. But here's what I think, how I would approach this. The key to managing communications like that is to set up some kind of a system, right? A protocol, so that everybody knows what the process is and how much time you're going to devote to it, right? So if you're concerned about them just dropping in, then you probably should create some kind of policy around how you're going to manage that.
I'm talking about the relationship between councillors and the union presidents.
Oh, God, yeah, well, makes me think of my police association. Yeah, you're lucky, but there's some fee in some regards. Well, I mean, I think you have to see them as a special interest group. I mean, any official representation from the union needs to come to council as a whole, right? And you ought to know that if they're calling you to have coffee or tea or lunch, they're calling you to lobby, right? And, you know, which is fine. That's their job, right? And you have to see them in the same way that you would see any special interest group. I mean, they have a special relationship, and it's a unique relationship, and it's really complicated. But they're going to want your time, and they're going to want your ear, and they're going to work at it, and that's good. But you need to be alive to that, right?
So what about that period of time when the union and the city are in negotiations? So how does that impact on the duty to bargain in good faith if they're, let's say, the union that is wanting to go behind that bargaining table and talk to the individual councillors? Hopefully they'll be back at the bargaining table.
Well, boy, I got, again, this is off the top of my head, and I will muse on this, but I would be very cautious. I mean, I think immediately of my police association, and I was open to meeting with them and hearing what they had to say, but I gotta tell you, my radar was right up, right? because that's what they're doing. And you know, they're good on them, right? But I'm not going to be, I would resist being influenced in that kind of context, because really, you know, in work, and just think about the liability and the risk associated with that. I mean, really, it's scary. You're bargaining, you're negotiating. It should happen through your staff who are professionals, right? And it should happen with you as a group, right? I would really resist that. Now, is there any time, Ted, when the union officials come face to face with the councillors?
As a body?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, so they have that.
Rarely.
Rarely, but through negotiations?
No.
So you manage the face-to-face with them, and then it's brought to the council table, right?
That budget, they may make a presentation of another instance with.
There's some language in the collective agreement that gives them the right to come to council if they disapprove the report that affects their bargaining members. So in those cases, they might come to council.
Yeah.
But during negotiations, there is a bargaining team that represents council's mandate, and we often will advise council members to refer, to the union as well. They come and that the bargaining team is negotiating on their behalf.
So I still like I like your tact on maybe a disclosure with council so that all of council understands, because, as staff, we want to be transparent in terms of interactions both ways, whether something's affecting the organization where we know that the union's upset, we want to be able to tell council, and if council knows that they're upset through discussions about how the operations are happening, then we should talk about it, and that it's a hard thing to do it.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked about that, thank you, Terry, for that information, because I always want to believe that any group, in this case, the union representatives, has the opportunity to come and get the ear of council. So at a public meeting, this would happen. They would come and they would make their case. And that's really how it should be. So in my mind, so if you have a bargaining team that's, doing their work, and the union representatives feel really unfairly treated, they always have this opportunity to come and speak directly with you as a group. And that's kind of the natural justice side of things, right? That they have that opportunity. And so beyond that, do you really need to be involved? You will be probably doing nothing but interfering, right, with the management team or the bargaining team. So it's really a hard line to walk, but I would probably resist meeting with them.
So again, back to the recent LGLA, where it said two of the main items that council is responsible for. One, council is responsible for their budget.
Yeah.
Council is responsible for the size of the civil service.
Yeah.
So when we have email correspondence from our union with respect to both of those items, should that not be done through under the L, one of the three L's, as a closed meeting of council, such presentation, as opposed to email?
So these emails would be lobbying you, or
Correct.
say they're stating their case,
Correct.
right? It's up to them whether they want that information to be public or not. It's up to them. It's your response that's probably more important, right? I just think if the union, if you're in negotiations and the union is sending you information, all you need to do is say thank you very much.
Well, I think the topic of conversation here is about the interaction between the union presidents, lobbying on behalf of their members, and council or individual members of council.
Right.
So I think we should be developing policy around about how we do that. Because it's quite vague right now. As you say, if the union president wants to get together and have a coffee with the lobby, should I be saying, well, actually, no,
yeah,
I think you should bring this information forward
yeah,
in a closed council of meeting and
Yeah.
present it to everybody, so everybody's got all the information.
yeah. Well, I mean, we certainly could do that, or your staff could do that, provide some guidance about how you were to interact with the union. I mean, that's, and then again, as a group, you wanna agree to that. So that's one, yes, you could do that. And, you know, if you were to take my advice, you'd be very cautious about it. And two, there already is policy that if the union wants to speak to you as a group, they have that opportunity to do that. So yeah, I or your staff would certainly do that, yeah.
On the topic,
Right, yeah.
meeting preparation.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing this up in defense of Councillor Anderson, who has been hammered about not attending budget meetings. And the first one is councillors commit to attending all council and committee meetings except when ill or out of town.
Right,
Now George, goes to VIU, other councillors work,
yeah,
and many sessions were scheduled at 9 o'clock in the morning on midweekdays, and it's totally impossible for this particular individual to have attended all those meetings without screwing up his academic life.
right,
And so how do you deal with that? He's in town, he's not in.
yeah. Well, if council wants to add another exception here, we could, or other, you know, legitimate or well justified obligations, I mean, I'm happy to do that.
Oh, we have. We have,
We do that, we do that.
we voted on it and said Yes. if we want to change the meetings or not. And
Right. I think, you know, my point in putting this is that, you know, my concern in articulating this is people should not attend meetings because they don't like what's being discussed. You have an obligation to attend meetings. And if you don't like what's being discussed at the meeting, do that. You need to be there. So that was what my thinking is, but I certainly can add something there.
I was just gonna say, you know, but I think in broad terms, we understand what that means. I mean, you could add, you know, if you're going to university or exemption, you know, if you're working, I mean, the list could go on ad nauseum, but I think that basically this covers it. And most reasonable people would understand the intent.
Yeah. I certainly can add another thing, and it really is. And maybe what I should do is just add a little bit about why this is in here, right? You really, it's your responsibility, so show up.
The community charter talks about attendance at council meetings or meetings of council.
Yeah.
Is a committee of the whole or public hearing, which is considered to be a special meeting of council in
Yeah.
Nanaimo,
Yeah.
are those all considered to
Yes.
be meetings of council?
Yes.
So when a person misses 3 of those meetings, she could be disbarred.
Oh, I think actually, Ian, can you answer this? I think the act is actually specific about that. You actually,
Scheduled, something is regularly scheduled.
they're regular, so the language around that particular part of the act is very specific. And I think the missing 3 is about regular scheduled council meetings. But that's not to say that those other meetings are not meetings of council, right?
So essentially that could be 3 months.
3 Mondays.
Yeah, if you miss 3 regular scheduled council meetings.
Not committee of the whole.
No, I think in the,
6 weeks.
so how often do you have
Every other week.
real council, every other week? So, so twice a month, so within 6 weeks, if you miss those 6 weeks, you could be in jeopardy. Okay, anything else about that? This?
I just have a very quick, you know, I can see this might happen with the financial plan, for example, when we finally adopt it. I'm guessing there'll be some members of council who will vote against it, period. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and then the only reason I brought that up is because you have said a number of times, this is something you can sign your name to.
Yeah.
Well, there will be some that will not sign it. Maybe will not sign their name to that.
Well, that's okay. You know, these,
I'm guessing.
yeah, well, if there are people that can't sign their name to these documents, then we need to really figure out why. I understand that not everyone's going to agree to all your decisions, right? They're not gonna sign the financial plans, I get that. Some people are gonna oppose the financial plan or the budget or whatever, they're gonna oppose it, and that's fine, they don't have to sign their name to that. But the intent of these documents is that you will all agree to this, and if you don't, then you need to explain what is it that you don't agree with, right?
Yeah, that was kind of a softball question, kind of a hard one, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just a thought, I mean, I guess there's no real.
Well, there's something you do, but you know, I think that, you know, if people, if an individual said, well, you know, I don't think that, like, I'm not comfortable agreeing to behave in a business-like way at a council meeting. Well, if that's what you're saying, then you need to live by that, and you need to communicate that to the public, that I'm prepared to be a jerk at the council table, and I'm not signing this. Right? So that's why I'm asking, is there anything here that you're uncomfortable with, right?
That'll be the fourth time she said that.
I'll sign, I'll sign.
You've been assigned.
Anything else in this list? I mean, those are all really good questions. Can we just look at the bottom here, consequences of breaches of the performance expectations? And I have made reference to this report that was presented at Alternate CEO Forum under the Security Report about kind of the legal background of councillor conduct. These two cases that I referred to, Barnett versus Caribou and Staken versus Prince George, you probably know the Staken case, it was the breach of confidential information. And these are really interesting cases. But the bottom line is that the courts in this, you know, we have very short kind of legal history around this, but they have said, you know, that you legitimately as a group can manage your own behavior, right? And that you have the ability to sanction each other in the cases of, you know, misconduct. So, using that as my basis, I've suggested a number of measures you can take. Again, going back to what I discussed earlier, the first thing is to be able to identify the behavior. You know, somebody speaking out of turn, somebody's catcalling or heckling or criticizing the staff. You need to identify that and you need to speak up. And I'm sure Ellie said this to you too. And so the chair of the meeting has the ability to intervene and to ask that the behavior cease. Council has an option to pass a motion of censure. And really, what does that do? I mean, really what it does is it draws attention to the bad behavior. And I would hope would, you know, bring it to the attention of the public. I mean, public meetings, most of them. And that's what we want to do, is say, you know, as a group, we don't think this behavior is